All right. So welcome everybody to our webinar on helping the angry child heal through aggression, bullying, violence, and mean types of behaviors. And what you're going to learn today is why children act out aggressively or violently, 3 steps to transforming aggressive and violent behaviors, and how we can help our children deal with anger and those intense feelings that are at the root of violent outbursts or attacks. We'll also talk about the democratic parenting approach to intervening in violent attacks, like when a child is hitting or biting or kicking another child. How can we intervene in the moment using the democratic parenting model? So, first of all, who am I? What makes me an expert on child behavior, and why should you listen to me? Well, my name's Dr. Blaise Ryan, and I'm a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, which means I treat the root cause of disease, not just the symptoms. And when I became a father, my training in Chinese medicine led me to question the standard approaches to parenting, from the old school authoritarian approach to the more modern day permissive approach. And I asked myself, might there not be an easier way, a less stressful way that is easier and less exhausting for myself and also for the child? And so my interest in this led me to do a lot of research, and I founded Child Brain Health and the ParentLearningClub.com. And over the years, I put together all the information that we've accumulated into a book called Democratic Parenting. Now, democratic parenting is not a term that I invented. It's been around for quite a while. What I tried to do is just to make the methods and the techniques more accessible to more people, because it worked so well for me and for all the parents who used it. So I want to really tell you what an honor it is for me to be on this webinar and to spend this time with you. I know that each and every one of you is really a wonderful parent if you're investing the time and energy into learning about a more gentle and less aggressive way to deal with your child's own aggression and violence. So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that. Now, also I want to just say a bit of a disclaimer here, is that I don't have all the answers. No one can tell you how to raise your child better than yourself. That's why you're their parent. That's why they chose you as your parent. And deep down inside, no one knows the entire situation, the circumstances surrounding your child and your family better than yourself. Also, my opinions and suggestions in this webinar don't substitute the benefits of getting personalized medical and psychological advice if you need to, okay? So if need be, definitely consult your family doctor for some really intense situations. So I just want to say that little disclaimer there so we can start off on the right foot. Now, why do kids act out aggressively or violently? Well, it's because of strong feelings and emotions, right? Namely, we're talking about anger and aggression. And these children don't know how to express these strong feelings in healthier or more non-violent ways. And this frustration and anger, there's different degrees of anger. We can start off on one end where it's just kind of annoyance. And this is something that we all experience all the time. Children often can annoy us with just subtle behaviors, right? And that's kind of the very beginning stages of anger. And that can also be moodiness. That can grow into moodiness, where it's just kind of this pervasive, lingering or underlying anger that kind of comes up now and again. And then there's irritation, right? Just to be irritated. And then there's frustrated. And we see a lot, especially children who are having a hard time with certain challenges can get frustrated really quickly with trying to overcome those challenges. And then that can grow into being upset. And then we have downright anger, right? When the emotion has come to the point where they're angry. And then we can go to the next level where a child or even a person is raging. And then finally they freak out and they just lose it. And that's when the violence or the aggressive outburst can happen. So it's important for us to kind of recognize all these stages here, because we're really talking about the same feelings and the same emotions, just the different, the different polarities on the whole spectrum. We need to be aware of these, because the more sensitive and aware we can be of the more subtle degrees of anger when they start showing up with our child, the more we can kind of act preemptively to avert and prevent the anger or the emotion from accumulating and growing into an outburst or into an aggressive attack. So when we can kind of see that our child is starting to get frustrated or irritated, then we can take kind of proactive measures to bring the child back on track and reduce the anger so it doesn't blow up. Now, Because I come from a Chinese traditional background, I have a different perspective on emotions, and I just wanted to share this all with you because first off, what I want to do is kind of explore the emotion of anger, and like anger has been the cause of so much violence and so much pain and suffering for humanity for centuries and millennia. And you think that at our stage in evolution that we would teach children in school and how to deal with their emotions, and specifically how to express their anger in more healthy ways. Because frankly, isn't that something that we could all use? And a lot of us find ourselves as adults having a hard time dealing with our own anger, let alone trying to help our children do that. So in China, the Chinese medical model has a pretty cool perspective on emotions, and by understanding the emotions from this model, then we can kind of start to see the energies of these emotions and find more harmony and balance with them. So in Chinese medicine, there are 5 types of emotions. We have anger, joy, pensiveness, sadness, and fear. Okay? So pensiveness refers to just kind of thinking and ruminating, that kind of thing. And then these are the 5 basic emotions. And of course, just like anger, just like we explored with anger, there are different degrees within each one of them. Okay? Now, these 5 emotions correlate to what are called the 5 elements in Chinese medicine. Now, these five elements, these are it's a metaphor, okay, to understand different movements and tendencies and drives within our being and within life, because the Chinese mapped out these 5 elements centuries ago and linked them to the entire, from everything in the entire universe to everything inside the body, and found these links between these 5 elements. Now I'm just going to show you how these 5 emotions connect to the 5 elements, and then that will help us get a better perspective of how to work with anger. So anger is associated with the element of wood, and joy is with the element of fire, pensiveness is with the element of earth, sadness is with the element of metal, and fear correlates to the element of water. So there we have the 5 elements of Chinese medicine: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And they all work in harmony, provided that they are all balanced and working correctly. And if any one of them goes out of balance, then it can also affect the others. So we can see that anger is associated with the element of wood. And wood represents growth, movement, freedom. It also represents like springtime, right? The sprouting of seeds, the growth of plants, right? Because that's what we're really talking about, is the wood energy, like that which moves through trees. And it also represents planning, because as we move forward and as we grow, we need to plan to where we're going. It represents our ability to make decisions, right? Because if we're growing and moving in one direction, we're choosing that direction over another. And that's something where we can see how people's wood element, how imbalanced it is in Chinese medicine, by seeing how well they can make decisions and stick to their decisions. It also represents ambition, right? Just like trees and plants are growing to up towards the light, that's the ambition of the plants, of the wood element. So our ambition is directly correlated to how healthy and balanced the element of wood is in ourselves. It represents goals and achievement as well. All our ability to achieve and to plan for goals is all falls under the category of the element of wood. Okay, so wood really represents the upward movement of life. Okay, it makes sense, right? Because we're talking again about trees and plant. Everything is growing upward, and we all have this wood element, this energy, this tendency within us as well, right? And like a plant, if you're not growing, you're automatically dying. And that's pretty much with everything that's alive on Earth. If they're not growing, if they're not expanding, then the opposite of growth, is stagnation, which eventually turns into death, right? And destruction. So anything that inhibits our upward movement in life, i.e. the wood element, inspires anger, okay? So that gives us a good perspective of how this anger comes about. It's just an inhibition of the natural wood element. Now, anger activates what I call the fighting spirit. Okay, now the fighting spirit represents our ability to conquer difficulties in life, to overcome obstacles, and to meet our challenges head on. Okay, so the fighting spirit is not bad. The problem is when we turn our fighting spirit onto another person, when we make our anger personal. That's when violence, whether it's subtle or obvious violence, and pain, whether physical or emotional pain, can erupt, right? When we make our anger personal and direct that fighting spirit onto a person rather than the challenge or the obstacle that we're trying to get through. So the fighting spirit is within all of us, and it's like a sword that we all carry that allows us to be autonomous, strong, and confident people in our own lives. Now, we can't discard it, nor do we want to. And if we don't learn how to use it properly, then we can hurt ourselves with it or another, right? Just like as if we're carrying a sword, if we don't know how to wield it and use it properly, then when it comes out, when we take it out, which it will because it's an innate and inherent and instinctual part of us, then we can easily end up hurting ourselves or someone else with it. So we don't want to repress a child's anger through scolding them, through punishing them, through distracting them, or through giving them bribes, because all repression seeks expression, right? And if we try to repress that anger, that fighting spirit that is trying to express that it's feeling inhibited, then that we can definitely distract the child for a while, or we can repress them and shut them down through harsh punishments. But that anger, that resentment, that fighting spirit is not going to go away, and it's just going to simmer underneath, and it's going to find a way to express. You know, and outbursts are just that, right? They're the bursting out of feelings that have been buried, or that are lingering, or that are there, or that need expression, right? That's what outbursts are, the bursting out. So how do we help our children master their fighting spirit and retain their willpower and learn how to express their feelings in healthy and productive ways? So the democratic parenting approach to discipline focuses on fixing the root cause of behavior. And if you read my book, Democratic Parenting, or listened to our other webinars, you know that I talk a lot about the 3 reasons for misbehavior, which are the 3 root causes behind all types of behavior. Okay, so we're gonna go through that right now, just a broad overview. And the first reason why any child will be aggressive or have anger or have really strong feelings or be violent or be mean, one of the reasons could be unmet legitimate needs, right? Things that they actually need that they're not getting. Therefore, they're driven to find ways to have those needs met, and it's not always the most healthy way. The next is stress, right? Now, children get stressed really easy, and it's something that we often overlook as parents, is how much our fast-paced kind of adult-centered lifestyle can stress children out just by the sheer overstimulation of a lot of the schedules or lifestyles that we keep, that our children are kind of forced to keep up with us in this modern day and age. Also, the pressure that children experience in schools or in life nowadays, that those can also accumulate into leading a child to be stressed. Not to mention all types about the stress. And there's 4 specific types of stress, which again I talk about in my book, Democratic Parenting, and I go deeply into stress on the webinar on helping children heal from childhood stress and trauma. But I'll just review this quickly, just to because this is a really important part of understanding how to help children overcome aggression and violence. Because I'd say a lot of the time, if not all of the time, if a child's acting out aggressively or violently, then there is some stress there. And there's 4 types of stress. We have active stress or aggressive stress, which is caused by coming into contact with violence or aggression themselves, like being hit or scolded or kicked or spanked, that kind of thing. Then we have passive stress. Okay, passive stress is the stress that a child acquires by prolonged unmet needs. So it's the pressure of unmet needs over a period of time will develop into stress. Just to talk about one of the needs perhaps is that if a child, for example, one of the needs we have is to have adequate sleep, right? And to get the sleep we need for our body to rejuvenate. Now, if a child doesn't get adequate sleep, then it's going to start to stress out the physical body, not even to mention their psychological aspect as well. Or if a child's need for attention goes unmet too long, then they're going to start to, exhibit behaviors that are bent on trying to get that need for attention met. We've all heard the saying that, sometimes bad attention is better than no attention at all. And that's often the reason given to why kids can be naughty at times. So if the need for attention or any of the needs, the legitimate childhood needs that kids have go unmet for a period of time, it will develop into a type of stress, and the child will get anxious to some degree. And then another type of stress we have is situational stress. And situational stress is really nobody's fault. Their stress is just caused by life changes like moving houses, changing schools, natural disasters, hearing about wars or natural disasters on the news. That's kind of like a situational stress. It's something just in the environment that the child will hear and then can embody some of the worry and fears associated with hearing that type of news. Death of a family member or even a pet. Those are all different examples of situational type of stress. And then, of course, the fourth type of stress is birth stress, okay, caused by birth trauma, which can affect children, throughout their whole life. But specifically, we see this manifested right after the time of the child being born, within the first couple of years. So typically, if we want to help that, then we need to take proactive measures right away to help resolve some of the birth-caused stress. So those are the four types of stress that can be at the root cause for some of these types of difficult behavior. And the third reason we have is role models, right? Children are natural born models. They model the whole world around them, and that's how they learn how to walk and talk and behave and relate and connect with people, is by modeling the people in their lives. And their primary role models are, of course, the parents and secondary siblings and other family members, and even characters that they see on TV or in movies or on the news or on the street or in their neighborhood. All the behaviors that they see anywhere act in some way as a type of role model for children. Okay, so the child might see someone behave in a certain way and therefore try that behavior out. And so sometimes that is a cause of behavior. Now, specifically when it comes to aggression and violence, we also have to take a look at whether or not our child is having role models in their life which are showing the same type of behavior, whether it's parents or aunts or uncles or other family members, or whether it's their siblings that might be bullying them, or other students in school who might be aggressive. And we can see how this transfers sometimes, where a child might be pushed by another at school, but they won't say anything, and they'll kind of turn more inward and be more withdrawn. And then when they get home, they're also very withdrawn. You can tell something's wrong with them, and they might kind of they might exhibit that same type of violent or aggressive behavior towards a younger sibling, or even a pet sometimes, because they kind of took on that violence or aggression, and they're transferring it on. So we need to take a very careful look at the root cause of these behaviors and understand that these three reasons will be at the root, to some degree, of why a child is acting out in angry, bullying, or aggressive ways. Okay? Now, how do we transform violent and aggressive behaviors in children? Now, we're talking about from toddlers to teens. I wanted to make this webinar as simple and straightforward and as pragmatic and practical for you as possible, so you can kind of get some nuggets from this and use this right away. So I've kind of outlined a very simple approach, but a very effective approach to dealing with this type of behavior. And this will work from toddlers to teens. There's actually no difference. In fact, this type of approach can even be used with adults, because we're really talking about human relationship here. And of course, there's different things we need to consider when we're working with adults to toddlers, right? There's a whole different psychological components and different circumstances and stuff. But the same basic approach will work when you apply it. Okay, so So the 3 steps, okay, there's 3 steps to transforming violent and aggressive behaviors in children. The first one is meeting their needs, okay? Straightforward, because we just talked about when we look at the root cause of behaviors, unmet needs is a big one. And there will be some unmet needs there. If a child is acting out aggressively or if they're angry, there will be unmet needs there that you need to address in order to fix it on a root cause level and create that permanent shift in your child. If you use punishments, distractions, threats, that type of thing to try and control and rein in the violence or the aggression, you won't be addressing the underlying need. Therefore, you're not going to create a long-term change in the child's behavior. Okay. The next one is we want to heal their stress and trauma, because again, we just talked about how stress is a really big factor, and it's almost always at play when we're talking about these types of emotions. And then finally, intervention. Okay, and this is for when we're there and a child tries to hurt or hit or cause pain to another child. How do we intervene in the moment? Okay, so let's go through this. So first, let's talk about some of the needs that quell the fires of frustration. Okay, now I do a webinar on the 15 childhood needs. I outline 15 essential needs that you can meet for your children. There are practical ways to help your child feel like everything is good and that life is good, and therefore they act in much more cooperative and easy ways. But what I took out of those 15 is I found the main ones that I find at play for most of the time when we're talking about anger, frustration, aggression, and violence. And the first one is the need for autonomy. Okay, this is a big one, and it's something that we all have. We need to be autonomous. We need to feel powerful. We need to feel independent, and it's something that especially children have, right? Because they need to they need to learn independence, right? And children and human are different than most animals, because the majority of animals on Earth, achieve their independence much quicker than humans, where humans stay dependent upon their parents much longer. But at the same time, as they're growing and as they're learning, this need for autonomy is very strong. And if a child feels that their need for autonomy is not being met, if they're not given enough choice, if they're not given enough responsibility with power, they'll start to act out. They'll become extremely defiant, and that can also escalate into aggression. Need for connection. Now, this is the biggest need that all children have, and this is because instinctively children know that their very survival depends upon their connection with the adults in their life, right? We're the ones who feed them and take care of them. Anything that threatens or undermines their sense of connection, and I emphasize their sense of connection, because it's not so much whether you feel like you're connected to your child, but it's whether they feel like they're connected to you, okay? Anything that undermines or threatens that will instinctively cause them to feel stressed, because they sense that their very survival is threatened, right? If they feel that disconnect or that breaking connection, they go into the fight or flight response, right? Because instinctively they're feeling like their survival is a bit, is being threatened. So to reestablish that connection is the shortcut to helping children through all types of behavior issues. And it's not just children, even teens, even adults, right? When I'm working with adults, my one-to-one counseling, the biggest and most important part is connection, whether it's my connection with my clients and patients, or whether I'm helping them through challenges which usually correlate around their connection with people in their lives. Okay, so this need for connection is extremely important. And anything, again, that threatens that will cause children to act in all types of difficult ways. Need for attention, right? That's the straightforward, that children have a strong need for attention. And we can see oftentimes where we have siblings that are fighting, especially when there's a new baby in the picture and they come, and the older child that was the youngest one previous to that might feel like they're not getting as much attention as they were before. And so then they might start to act out and even act aggressively or violently towards the baby. Okay, and that's a natural response that we see often. And really what it's pointing to is that they need a bit more connection, they need a bit more attention, okay? Just by giving them that, we'll usually quell those fires of anger that are underneath their violence. Next, we have the need for a nurturing environment, okay? Now, of course, children and everything living needs to grow in a nurturing environment, and this refers to their house, their community, wherever, even their school, right? That it's a nurturing and safe environment. So if at school there are children who are bullies that are affecting your child, that's not a nurturing environment, right? So we can see that need is not being met. If your child lives in a war zone or lives in a house where the parents are always fighting or squabbling, then that can also affect the child, and it's not such a nurturing environment. If the child is also not getting adequate, if there's sometimes too much clutter even in the environment in their home or house, that can affect their psyche and their ability to be at peace, and it can cause them to act out as well. Next, we have the need for processing, okay? Now, processing here, I'm referring to processing experience, processing information, and processing feelings and emotions, okay? Now, children experience feelings and emotion very intensely, okay? Much more so than adults for the most part, because we've learned over the years to kind of subdue our sensitivity to the world and to the stimulation. But children's, their antennas are still very sensitive and wide open. So children need time and space to just process things. Again, whether it's just experiences that they've had at school, busy day at school, or gone to a birthday party, or time with family, or just running errands. To give a child just time to process that can just do wonders for the child. And the same thing if they have really strong feelings or emotions like anger or sadness or fears, to allow them the opportunity to process those feelings, okay, is really important, because that way we can drain those feelings and the child can return to a state of clear thinking, good judgment, zest, and be present and connected again to the world around them. Another need is for information. Okay, children need information. This refers to sometimes just learning things and knowing things. And so, especially with the younger children, toddlers and whatnot, when we're limiting and intervening in any type of aggressive behavior, we also want to give them information verbally and intellectually to tell them, of course, that's not appropriate. You can't do that. You can't hurt another child, or you can't hurt your brother, or that kind of thing. Also, to give them information to kind of to reduce the unexpected surprises which can sometimes affect children, right? Because a lot of these behavioral issues that we see in children come up during times of transition, right? When we're changing out of patterns. So sometimes unexpected things or unexpected transitions can really upset children. So by just offering more information through communication, by talking to them, by just sharing them, by telling them, okay, we're going to go here, we're going to do this, or such and such is going to come over, or this is going to happen, and just kind of setting them up a little bit to kind of preempt them and give them something, to give them the information they need to kind of flow better through the day. And, every child is different. Every child's need for processing and need for information varies. So with all these needs, you have to just use your good judgment in terms of how best to meet your specific child's needs, considering all the circumstances in your life. That's why I said before that you are by far the best person alive to parent your child and to use all these tools with your child, because you'll know how best to deliver this information and how much information too. And talking about the need for information, mistake that I see a lot of parents make is they actually give their child too much information, especially around kind of adult or more mature content, okay, by talking about news or politics or wars or disasters, or those types of things are beyond most children, and they can actually stress them out a fair bit, because typically those types of things are talking about the more negative aspects, the things that aren't working in life, and it really detracts from the child's sense that everything is good in life. So the information we want to give to the child is more about information they need in order to feel happier, to feel more content, to connect easier with other children, other people, and just to kind of set them up for happiness and success in life and being a whole person. Okay, not so much in terms of telling them how the world is and telling them how they need to think and telling them what they need to watch out for. Okay, so we need to use our discernment around that. Another need is the need for affection, right? We all know that every living animal needs affection, and we've heard about the experiments done on poor babies a long time ago, where the orphan babies were not given physical affection, and a lot of them fell sick and died. And something that all children, and I think all animals probably need, is just that physical affection. I'm talking about hugs and gentle touch and cuddles and that type of thing. And that can really help children who are aggressive and violent just to come back into the soft aspect of their body rather than the hard and the fighting aspect. Need for chemical balance. Okay, now I'm talking here specifically about affecting our chemical balance naturally through an easy way by working on our diet, our sleep, and our exercise, right? Because all these things affect our hormonal system, which affects our chemical balance. And I'm definitely not referring to balancing the brain chemistry through drugs or pharmaceutical medication, because for the most part, I'm against those unless absolutely necessary to save lives. But we can affect our child's chemical balance by giving them healthy nutrition, making sure they're getting adequate sleep, making sure they're getting enough exercise, and also helping them process stress to relieve the body of any accumulation of stress hormones which can come up if a child is stressed or traumatized. Okay, so those are are meeting the needs, and that's the first step we talked about in helping children overcome this type of aggression, to transform it, to bring the child back to a state of empathy, of love, connection, and care permanently, right? So that we can do away with this type of anger. We're not repressing or suppressing it, but we're moving beyond that. We're addressing the underlying root cause. The next step is healing the stress and trauma, okay? Because we talked about that's the stress is the second reason for difficult behavior, and when it comes to violence or aggression, there is always a certain degree of stress there. And in my book, I talk about the 8 specific ways to heal from stress and trauma, and I'm going to go through those quickly right here. Okay, the first one is talking, just talking about our feelings, and that's why talk therapy, with psychiatric help or psychologist or therapist is effective, because just by talking and venting, oftentimes we can resolve some of our internal pressure or stress. Crying is very beneficial for reducing stress, and there have been scientific studies showing how stress hormones, which are actually toxic to your brain and decrease your ability to think clearly and have good judgment, those toxic stress hormones are actually reduced by having a good emotional cry. And that's why children cry often and naturally, right? Because it's their kind of inborn repair kit to heal from stress, is to cry it out. So it's not something we want to repress in children. We do not want to stop a child from crying, right? If they need to cry. What we want to try and do instead is to assist that child to drain those feelings to completion by just being there with them and connecting with them while they have a good cry, and they can just get that frustration and the anger or the feelings, the sadness, the fear, whatever it is that's behind those emotions that's coming out through the tears. We want to just be there with the child and help them drain that, so that when they're finished that crying, they see that we're there right with them, and that connection is so strong. And again, that connection, like I said, is the most important thing that a child really needs in order for them to be truly happy, content, and empathetic, right? Because the more connected they are with you and with the world, obviously, the less aggressive and violent they're going to be, because they'll be more sensitive and empathetic. So crying is a great way to heal from stress and trauma. Symbolic play, right? We see children do that all the time, where sometimes they kind of, they're playing kitchen or playing, doctor or other types of things that oftentimes it's a great way. That's how they kind of process experiences and that type of thing. But it's similar to talking in a way to kind of process some pressure or tension or even stress is just by playing symbolically. Laughter is another great way to heal from stress. We all have heard the saying that the best medicine is laughter. So that's why there's a technique in my book called Natural Giggles, which is a very effective way to bridge the connection and reduce stress and tension for children. Sleeping, right? Obviously, our whole body recovers from the stresses of our day by having a good sleep. Sweating, that's a great way to cleanse out the stress hormones that can accumulate throughout our days or after traumas or stressful incidents. It's just a purifying mechanism of our body. Muscle release, right? We hold tension when we're stressed, right? That's why people get kind of stress headaches and that kind of thing from muscular tension. So releasing the muscles helps diffuse the tension and stress through the whole body. That's why massage therapy and those types of touch therapeutic approaches are really good to reduce stress. And it happens naturally for a lot of us when we're falling asleep or just relaxing, as the muscles will start to release as well. And then getting sick, okay? And getting sick is, again, a way for us to kind of just cleanse out the toxins. And I'm referring mostly to kind of colds and flus and that type of thing. But there's, children can sometimes have, vomit or diarrhea or these types of things, which are sometimes just their body's natural way to heal from an emotional, stressful situation or built up pressure or tension. But not always. And that's why I have that little star there, because I just want to say that, obviously you have to be careful and use your good judgment. And if your child is sick and you need to take them to the doctor, then definitely take them to the doctor, okay? Okay, so that's how 8 specific ways to heal from stress. And again, if you want more information on this, you can get my book, Democratic Parenting, and go a bit deeper into this. Or you can watch the webinar on helping children heal from stress and trauma, where I go much deeper into this whole, into stress and how to help children through that. Next, let's talk about the third approach, which is intervention, right? When a child is going to hit another one, how do we use it? How do we stop that violence in its tracks using democratic parenting methods? So I practice Tai Chi, actually teach Tai Chi, and one of the principles of Tai Chi is to use water to put out fire. Okay, now if some of you don't know what Tai Chi is, it's an ancient Chinese kind of martial art, but it's all very slow moving. It's kind of like Aikido, where it's slow and soft. And again, some of the principles are, again, to use water to put out fire, and also to use soft to overcome hard. Okay, so it's all about the yin and the yang. So, Chinese medicine talks about the yin and the yin is kind of like the receptive part, and the yang is the more active part. So if someone is aggressively attacking you, that's kind of more of an active yang approach, and then you use more of a yin approach to kind of to receive that energy, but then we want to turn around by using the water or using the soft. Okay, so here are 4 steps that you can use to intervene in a violent attack. The first one is to use a physical limit to ensure everyone's safety. Okay, so if you see a child that's moving towards another child with the intent to strike, then we want to set a physical limit. So what we do is we actually, put our hand out or our body there and create a barrier to prevent the child from hurting the other one. So the first step is we need to ensure everyone's safety and create a physical limit to restrain the aggressive child. Next, we want to use connective communication to reach through the disconnect and diffuse the situation. Okay, connective communication is a specific democratic parenting method that I have an entire chapter on connective communication in my book. But what it is it's basically how to use your communication that increases connection, that either increases the sense of connection or that reaches through the disconnect. Okay, it kind of acts like a bridge. So if a child is freaking out and aggressive and angry, they're really disconnected at that point, to the point that they're hurting people. Okay, so connective communication acts like a bridge between you and that child to get the child back on track and for them to connect back to you. Okay. Next, the next step we want to take is to examine the 3 reasons for misbehavior and figure out the root cause. Okay, so after we've kind of made sure everyone's safe and stop the situation and use connective communication to bring the child back to a state of connection, then when we have the time, okay, maybe not right there at the during the attack, but if you can see clearly what the reason might be, you can do it right then, and then you can respond all that much quicker. But at some point, you want to examine the 3 reasons and figure out why the child acted that way. Do they have unmet needs? Are they stressed? Are they modeling this type of behavior somewhere? Okay, and then the final step is to schedule some play attention time with the child in order to better understand their needs and their frustration. Okay, play attention time is a very powerful democratic parenting technique. Again, there's an entire chapter written about it in my book. And what it is it's you schedule time with the child where you give them your full attention and you let them kind of direct the play, take the lead in the play, and you kind of act more like the follower, the support in the play, but you give them your full undivided attention for a specific period of time, preferably about an hour to an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours on a regular basis. And it meets, this technique is really powerful because it meets a variety of the child's needs, and it also it increases that connection so much because you're giving them a period of extended time with nothing but your pure, loving, full attention. And the child will tend to open up during the play attention time, or sometimes too opportunities for them to have a good cry, or to have a good healing, or to talk through some of their challenges, or to have good laughter, or to to use any of those techniques to heal stress. Oftentimes those opportunities will arise during the play attention time. And again, it also gives you a chance to better understand their needs and their frustration. So this is especially if you're working with an older child, a teen or something like that, and you're not sure exactly what the reason for their misbehavior might be, why they're acting that way, then by scheduling this play attention time, it's just time with them where you can start to just kind of get to know them again and get to figure out maybe what's missing or what's bothering them. Okay, and of course, during this play attention time, you don't do any probing, you don't do any asking or anything like that. You really let them kind of direct the play, and then at some point, they will reveal for themselves what they need to share with you to help them overcome this. So so that's kind of how you want to use the play attention time, is more just focus on the connection and be patient and wait for them to kind of share with you what's important. And you can, when you get more skilled with it, you can kind of start to take advantages of opportunities that can arise during the play attention time to better connect or to go deeper into your understanding with your child. But again, you don't want to take over the play and move away from the full attention, the connection, to a more questioning or probing or counseling type of interaction. You want to stay away from that and just focus on the connection. And you might need to schedule several play attention time with your child, maybe even regularly, to help them really work through their frustration or their anger. Okay, so if you follow these 4 steps, it will really help you intervene in a violent attack and to overcome this the behavior in the long term. So first, we want to set a physical limit, and then we move on to the rest. So let's go a little bit deeper in talking about setting these limits. Okay, so first we want to look at our main goal for democratic intervention is to assist our child in draining these intense feelings. Okay, so there's a reason, like, they have these strong feelings there, and we want to help them really drain that. We don't want to suppress them. We don't want to repress them. We want to assist them to drain them, get them out, and then they can come back to their relationships and the people in their lives without those feelings kind of hanging over them. And that will allow them to return to the state of clear thinking, to have good judgment, and to have zest for life again. Okay, so our main focus is really connecting with our child. And we can do this by using a technique I call reaching through disconnect. So the way we do this is there's a couple of things you want to pay attention to reach through disconnect. First, we use our eye contact. Okay, by making eye contact, it's an immediate way to connect with another, and we give them our full loving attention. The key word there is full. Okay, undivided, full loving attention. We use our tone of voice, and affectionate touch. Okay, so all of these things we use together to really reach through the disconnect with the child. Now, how do we use limits, specifically setting kind, democratic, non-harsh limits to heal from anger and stop aggression and violence? Well, there's three types of limits. There's verbal limits by using your voice, healing limits to help them heal through stress, and physical limits, like I said, to create a barrier. So verbal limits is using your words. It's like saying no or putting a barrier or a limit just verbally. And also, we can repeat things to help draw them deeper into their feelings, right? So, for example, a child who's really upset and angry, and trying to hurt another child, when we create the physical limit and make sure that they're safe, we can use verbal limits, to repeat them by saying, something like, "Sweetie, I'm not going to let you hurt your brother right now." And then they're going to struggle, and they're angry, and they're pushing, and they're growling, and maybe they're even crying and on the verge of a big tantrum, or maybe they're tantruming already. And then you just say it again, "Sweetie, I'm not going to let you hurt your brother." And then they just rage and rage, and then you say it again, and then finally they might just explode into a big cry, and that draws them deeper into their feelings by just repeating that limit there. Because limits kind of give children something to push up against. So it's kind of a barrier. And when they have these really strong feelings and there's no way to kind of vent in an aggressive way, but you put a limit there that they can't move, then they can start to vent at the limit. And you create a safe limit there for them to vent against so no one can get hurt. And then finally, all the feelings drain that are behind that frustration or the anger. Okay. Now, we want to also embed the connective communication when we're using the verbal limits. So to do that, again, we want to use a tone of voice, like we talked about reaching through. We want to use a soft, loving, yet firm tone of voice, okay, so that they know that this is serious and we're not going to let them hurt their brother, but we're still loving and we're still soft because we still want to connect. And we can use terms of endearment to help bring the child back to their heart. So in the example I just said there, I said, "Sweetie, I'm not going to let you hurt your brother," right? So I said "sweetie" because that's a term of endearment, which just kind of, again, brings them back to their heart, rather than kind of calling them, by using the old authoritarian approach by saying, "Charles Buckley James, you better not hurt your brother," by using their whole middle name and everything like that. It's not really a term of endearment. It just kind of evokes fear more than anything and increases the disconnect, right? But again, we want to connect through our communication. So that's why we use these types of terms of endearment, okay? Also, we want to use neutral phrases instead of blame phrases. Okay, so the neutral phrase is when you're talking more situationally, and blame phrases when you're talking more personally. Okay, so for example, when a child tries to hit his brother, you can say, "Sweetie, I'm not going to let you hurt your brother right now," right? Rather than saying, don't hit your brother, right? That would be a blame phrase where we're saying, don't hit your brother versus "I'm not going to let you hit your brother." Okay, so you can see the difference is that one has a really strong emphasis on blaming them for their action, and it has, a lot of connotations around making them feel guilty and making them feel bad. Where the neutral phrase is we're talking more about the situation, and we're taking any type of blame or guilt or any type of those negative emotions out of the context. All right. Next, we have healing limits. Okay, this is when we set up a limit and then the child erupts into having a big cry or tantrum or this type of thing, which is actually a healing effect. Okay, so again, we follow the same the 4 stages. Okay, and this again is described in the Democratic Parenting book under the chapter of setting limits. It's a pretty thick chapter where I go through all these details about setting limits. But the first one, again, we want to ensure everyone's safety, no one is hurt. We focus our loving attention on connecting with the child. We want to listen to the strong feelings and then repeat. Okay, so we want to allow the feelings to drain to completion. That's why we repeat it, and we repeat it when necessary. If we set a limit and the child has a big cry, we listen to their strong feelings, or is just upset and just venting, verbally talking about how upset they are. We just listen to them. We focus on connecting with the child, and then and then that might be good. And if it comes up again, the next day or in a couple of weeks or whatever, we repeat this. And then that will eventually allow the child to heal that stress behind there. Okay, now we talk about the next thing we're going to talk about is the 3 keys to healing stress through tantrums, outbursts, and raging. So we talked about reaching through disconnect, listening to the tears and feelings, and allow them to flow to completion. So this is just a summary of what we've talked about so far, is to kind of follow these 3 keys here, is to reach through the disconnect, listen to the feelings, and allow those feelings to flow to completion. That's when we're intervening in an outburst or an aggressive attack or something, and we have the time to really listen to those feelings and allow them to flow to completion. Obviously, it's everything's circumstantial. Sometimes we might be in the middle of the grocery store or whatever, and it's not the appropriate time or place to really listen to these feelings to flow, so we have to wait for another opportunity to arise. Okay. Now we talked about setting a physical limit. Now we use this to intervene to stop a child from hurting another. So we can use our body, our hands, our arms to disarm the aggressive child. And we could use some holding or shielding or create a barrier to do this. Okay. Now there are some important guidelines for you to consider when using a physical limit. First off, you need to temper yourself. Okay. You don't want to hurt the child, because if you hurt the child, it just increases the pain, the suffering, the aggression, right? It's instead of fighting fire with water, you're fighting fire with fire, right? Which is just going to cause the child to be even more upset. So keep your physical body soft, okay? Especially when holding or embracing. We want to use the metaphor around using water to put out fire and using softness to overcome hardness. So if the child is attacking another child or hitting another one, we want to use our body and use our hands and try to keep our hands and our body soft, so that when eventually the child kind of stops fighting and falls into our body, it's more welcoming. And the softer we are when we're creating a physical limit with an aggressive child, the more quickly and readily they will stop their fighting and just relax into an embrace with us, so that they can kind of just hug us. Because a child who's acting out aggressively is a hurting child, right? They're upset, they're in pain, and they're trying to make another person feel their same pain. That's why they're trying to hurt the other person. So if we can recognize that they're in pain and we can kind of embody that a loving, fully empathetic and fully compassionate body and being, that they know and they can feel that, okay, they can just let go of their aggression and they can just be in their pain, and we'll hold them. We'll create a safe place for them to relax into, and that's our embrace. And that's often what will happen is if you're really connected with your child, if you kind of stop them from hurting another one, and you stay there with them and they're really upset or raging, and you keep your body soft and you keep reaching through that disconnect, then more often than not the child will eventually just kind of collapse into your arms, into an embrace, and have a big cry and just completely drain those feelings. And then when they come out of that, they'll be happy and zestful and connected, and they won't have any resentment or upset with the person they earlier tried to hurt. And it's always amazes me how buoyant and children are, and how quickly they can transform and shift things, much quicker than adults. So one moment a child is really upset and hating another child, and then the next moment, after they've worked through their feelings, they're totally best friends again and totally connected. So that's the good news here, because by using these methods, you can create quicker change than you may think with your child, because of just the nature of children, how easily they can shift and change things. And the other thing you want to remember is to keep reaching for the child through your tone of voice, your eye contact, your full attention, and your loving touch, right? What I talked about before, but really reaching through the disconnect and using these different tools you have, your tone of voice, your eye contact, your full attention, and your loving touch, right, and connective communication to reach through, then that will diffuse the intensity and return the child to love and connection much quicker. Now, take comfort in knowing that all feelings have a beginning and an end. The hard part is that strong feelings in others bring up strong feelings in ourselves. Now, that means that if we don't allow ourselves to drain our own frustration as parents, then it's hard to listen to another's, especially our children. That's why it's important for us parents to clear our own mind and to fill our own cup, okay? So we need to take time out to rejuvenate, to refresh, to recreate. We need me time, okay? And you need me time. You need to take the me time that you need in order to fill your cup and to really be present with your child, to dissolve any anger or frustration or resentments that you might be carrying, so you can really be present for your child and help them overcome that. Adult-to-adult listening time is a great method to do this as well. And there's a chapter in my book about how to do this. And it's a great way, again, to drain any intense or difficult feelings you might have, that you can use it with anyone else in your life that's willing to practice this with you. Meditate, do Qigong, yoga, Tai Chi, sports, anything you need to do to kind of, again, clear your mind, fill your emotional reserves, and refresh your body. Write. That's another great way to vent, or talk and meet with friends, and keep learning, right? Keep growing, keep expanding. Keep being a person who's alive and who's achieving more, and that all these things help you achieve more happiness and more more emotional strength and agility as well. So, just a quick review of some of the main democratic intervention methods when we're dealing with a child who's aggressive, or with a bully, or who's angry, or who acts out violently. And this can work, again, from children of all ages. We talked about setting limits, okay? We talked about connective communication. We talked about play attention time and how important that is to really meet a lot of your child's needs and to increase the connection. And then there's also some other methods that are in my book, Democratic Parenting, and I'm going to briefly talk about here because they can also be useful for children who are going through this. One is called self-directed play. And this is the same thing as play attention time. The only difference is that self-directed play, they're doing it by themselves. So this is a great opportunity for them to use that kind of, to create therapeutic type play, or the symbolic type play, and to work through their own feelings. And it's also an opportunity for them to increase their needs for autonomy and creative expression, all these types of things as well. Another important method is to use what I call media control. And that's just controlling how much exposure your child has to media, whether it's television, movies, computer, radio, newspapers, magazines, all these types of media, cell phones, okay, all these types of media outlets often have inappropriate images or information on them that can really stress children out. And a lot of the stuff, especially on the news, okay, and we see that everywhere now as TV or radio or even newspapers, are really kind of violent and aggressive things in there, which can upset children. And that can really carry forward into how they behave. So we want to try and limit that as much as possible. We want to try and shield our children for as long as possible from these more negative influences and for this more kind of adult content. Because the truth is that they don't need to hear and know this stuff. What they need is to kind of grow up into self-sufficient, happy people who have strong skills in problem solving and creative thinking, and who are resilient and buoyant and who are adaptable. Okay, and they're going to have plenty of time when they grow up to watch the news and to figure out what's going on in the world of politics and wars and that kind of thing. But in my opinion, while they're children, let's let them be children. Let's let them play. Let's let them enjoy. Let's let them learn about how wonderful life is, how beautiful life is, and how much fun life can be, rather than just bombard them with electronic stimulation and negative news. Family meetings, okay? In my book, Democratic Parenting, I talk about family meetings, and I have a specific approach, we could say more of the democratic parenting approach to family meetings, where these meetings are really focused on connection. Now, the family meetings from a democratic approach will vary based upon your child's age, and these are really can be effective, especially helping older children through difficulties and emotions and stuff like that by doing regular family meetings. And it creates an environment where the child or the teen will feel equal and safe for them to really express what they might need to express to other people. Okay, so by setting up a democratic parenting style of family meeting, that gives the child that autonomy and the responsibility to just speak openly in an environment where they won't be punished or reprimanded, or it won't come back to bite them, because the family meeting space is kind of like a sacred space where we can really express ourselves in loving ways as well. So that can be especially useful for older children. Younger children, not so much. Mostly family meetings for younger children are just times of play. Even just getting together for family meals in some ways can be like family meetings as well. Because again, the focus is more around connection rather than communication for family meetings. So, and then we have natural consequences. Okay, the difference between natural consequences and what most people use for consequences, what I call coercive consequences, is that natural consequences are what would be the outcome if we didn't interfere. Coercive consequences, or consequences that we kind of create for our children if they do this or if they don't do this, those are consequences that we make up, and therefore we have to enforce. But natural consequences is more the natural outcome of things. Now, when it comes to working with aggression and violence and these types of behaviors, we typically don't use natural consequences with children. It's not the appropriate time to use this, okay? So we have to be very careful when and when not to use natural consequences. There's a full chapter in my book also on this, which gives more detail on it. But I wanted to mention here, because especially for teens or older children who you're at your wit's end and you've tried everything and they're resisting you, and you're having a hard time getting through, then to some degree you have to allow the natural consequences for their actions to happen and to let them experience that. Now again, with natural consequences, we always want to let the child experience those within safety, okay, within the safe limits, so that they don't get hurt and no one else gets hurt. So obviously with violence, that type of thing, we don't want we want to stop the violence so it doesn't go to that extent. But some ways we can use natural consequences is sometimes just to point out to the child that, well, their behavior, their aggression, their bullying, their anger is just, it's causing that person to feel this way, and just communicating it to in a connective way, in a way of giving information, not in a way to make them feel like guilty or to blame them, but just in a straightforward, neutral, using kind of neutral language kind of way of helping them kind of see that. Because sometimes a child might be so wrapped up in their feelings or their own world that they're experiencing the natural consequences of their actions, but they're not exactly sure, or they haven't made the link or the connection between something they did or their behavior and why the other person is acting this way. So sometimes it's appropriate to kind of just help them understand the natural consequences of their actions. And again, this is used a lot more for older children, like teens, preteens, that kind of thing. Maybe even children, 8 years old and up. We might use natural consequences to help them understand the effects of their aggression or their anger. It might be appropriate at most times, but for the most part, using everything else I've shared in this webinar will overcome the issues, and we won't have to go there. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of outline these main ones. I want to ask you, what are 3 of the main takeaways that you learned from this webinar that you feel that you can kind of implement in your life right away, or that was really useful or that stood out for you? So just take a moment here. We'll do a little bit of interaction, and then we'll get into the questions and stuff. But first off, just share a little bit about some of the main takeaways you got from this webinar, which you found useful. This will kind of just writing this out and will kind of help you kind of ground this into your life. All right, so Arlene wrote, learning the needs of children. Definitely, that's a big one. And when we know those needs, we can really be a lot more proactive and respond to the root level. Reaching through the child with eye contact and touch, as well as soft voice. That's from Renee. Thanks, Renee. That's a great thing to remember. Using neutral phrases instead of Blame phrases, that's from Linda. Thank you, Linda. Let's see. Using the Tai Chi principles. Oh, that's good. That's from Elena. The importance of play attention time. That's from Daniela. Oh yes, play attention time is so important, and it's really so powerful. And it looks, it doesn't look like it's much. You're just spending time with your child is what it looks like. But the type of attention, by giving that full attention and really allowing them to take the lead and for you to kind of act like a supportive role in the play, the children just eat that right up. Okay, let's see. Use water to put out fire, from Rosalina. And self-care. And me time. Yes, Rosalina, we all need that me time. We need to fill our own cup, take care of ourselves so we can be there for our children. Arlene wrote, the way to respond with soft, gentle words is better than harsh ways. Definitely, right? Because the harsh ways just increases that disconnect and increases the fire. And harshness is violence in itself, right? It's type of kind of emotional or psychological violence when we speak or say things that are harsh. So we're just increasing the sense of violence and aggression by being harsh. So that's why it's good to be soft and gentle. That outbursting is the outburst or the bursting out of internal emotions. That's from Linda. Yeah. Reaching through disconnect will be helpful in working with my clients. That's from Debbie. Thanks, Debbie. Letting the child cry rather than stopping them. That's from Renee. Oh, and that's so powerful, right? It's just letting the child cry. And by letting children cry and to drain those feelings, you'll see children just transform. I've seen it time and time again, how much they transform and they return back to being sweet and soft and caring and empathetic just by being given an opportunity to cry and release all those strong feelings. Okay. Arlene wrote, learning what causes frustration in the first place. Right. Yeah. Right. We talked about what causes frustration is that when they feel that their kind of natural impetus to grow and to learn and to have their needs met, if they feel like any of that is being inhibited or stopped, and that's going to cause the desire it's going to bring out the fighting spirit, right? When the more we can help our children learn healthy ways to use the fighting spirit in proactive ways by being a model for that ourselves, and also by just assisting them through these intervention methods when they kind of start to go the more aggressive and empty route of just venting frustration, by kind of giving them a more positive way to vent those feelings and to use their fighting spirit the way it's meant to be used, then we can really help them we'll help them give these tools for life, really, because anger and frustration is something that never goes away and that we have our whole life long. Okay, Lynn wrote, using neutral phrases instead of blame phrases. Thank you. Okay, great. So now, so this is the main part of the webinar we've finished, and next month I just want to mention we're doing another parent leadership certification program. This is a 5-week intensive training program where we certify you as parent leaders, and it's great whether you're a parent and you just want to go deeper into some of these principles and learn how to connect better with your child, or whether you work with children, whether you're a teacher or a counselor or a professional that works with children or parents. This will give you some really great tools. So we're going to be starting our next certification training on February 18th, and you can go to this link right here if you want to register. It's at www.parentlearningclub.com/leaders.html. And so some of you have been asking about continuing education credits. What we're in the process of applying for those with a lot of different organizations right now. So if you want to get continuing education credits for either these webinars or for our more intensive trainings, send us an email at support@parentlearningclub.com and let us know who your kind of governing body is, or the regulatory body for your profession, because we have to apply to each one of those in order to get approved by them, and then you will get the credits for them. So just send us an email, and we'll work with you on that. Okay, so if any of you have questions about what we've talked about, now's the time to ask them, and I'll do my best to answer them as much as possible. Okay, let's see here. We have some coming in. Okay, so Renee asks, what consequences should I implement when they hit or misbehave? they are 3 and 4 years old instead of spanking and timeouts. Okay, so again, consequences for 3 and 4-year-olds, I would not use them. Okay, I spoke about natural consequences, but I wouldn't use coercive consequences because those are just another form of punishments. And children are really quick to recognize that, and therefore it just increases the defiance, the resentment, and the rebelliousness when they feel that they're being punished. Okay, so for the kids that are 3 and 4, and they might hit or misbehave, what you want to do is use the approach I just told. Okay, so first you want to figure out what the root cause of the behavior is, find out what needs they're having, what kind of stress there is, and if there's any role models. Okay, and because they're boys around that age, sometimes it might just need a little bit more play attention time for some of their needs. And then otherwise, you want to do is use the intervention methods, right? So you want to stop them from hurting each other, and then use your connective communication to reinforce that we don't do that. We don't hurt, we don't hit and hurt. And it's going to take a while because they are young and they're working through that. And but by just repeating that the connective communication, that's not how we kind of express ourselves. And then what you also want to do is by using connective communication to really kind of bring them into talking, so that we can teach them how to express their frustration more easily through their voice. Another thing that you can do as well is to kind of create some kind of safe anchors, you could say, in the home, so that if a child is feeling like the other child did something to them which is unfair, then there's a safe way for them to seek reconciliation without becoming violent or aggressive. So a simple and easy way to do that is to just let them know that if something happens or if they feel like wronged by the other, to come talk to you. And then you'll step in and you'll talk it out with them to figure out what's going on. Okay, so that's why I think they talk about tattles and tattletaling and stuff like that. For the most part, I think there's nothing wrong with quote unquote tattletaling, because it gives children an opportunity to engage in communication and conversation rather than aggression and violence. Okay, so that's something you can start to work on them. They're very young, so you want to be careful you don't go too much into the intellectual and the rationalization of logics, because especially if they're acting out of unmet needs or stress, then no matter what you say and no matter what you try and teach them, it's not going to retain. They're not going to remember it because they're being driven by these needs or the stress. So you want to kind of focus on that first and making sure all the needs are met, and that if there is any stress, that you want to help them heal from that. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you, Renee. Okay, next, Linda asks, does your book also teach healthy ways of using the anger? Where in your book does it talk about birth traumas and how to apply your methods? Okay, so I don't really talk too much in the book about healthy ways of using anger. I talk about how to limit aggression and violence, which is kind of what we talked about in this webinar. But I don't really go too deep into anger or into emotions in the Democratic Parenting book. And then where does it talk about birth traumas and how to apply our methods? So under the section of helping children heal from stress, I talk a little bit about birth traumas, and then we talk, and most of the book talks about how to heal from stress throughout as well. Okay. Daniela asks, what if a child doesn't cry tears? How can we help them discharge? Okay, if the child doesn't cry, then we can help them discharge through talking, through laughing, through symbolic play. There's lots of different ways as well that we can really just help them discharge. So like I said, there's 8 kind of natural ways that you can help your children heal from stress that anyone can do, and these are like our inborn repair kits for stress or tension. So any one of these is really effective. And just as a refresher, we talked about talking about your problems, crying, but if they don't do that, then you can use symbolic play by using the self-directed play method. Laughter, using the technique of natural giggles is a great way to help them discharge. And then sleeping, Sweating, exercise as well can be really useful, and just getting that muscle release through exercise. And getting sick as well can just, that's obviously nothing we can help them with, and we don't want to help them with. That's more of a natural healing response that people or children will do on their own. Okay, I hope that was helpful, Daniela. Let's see, Arlene asks, what should a teacher do in the classroom when a child is continuously misbehaving and cannot give too much attention to the child at that time during the class? That's a great question, Arlene. So, I know the education system is doesn't always allow us to help children who are acting out or who are bullies or who are causing problems in the way that they really need to, because it's a big issue at hand, and oftentimes there can be things that are happening at home which are really at the root cause of the child's misbehavior. So, but one of the a great way to help children in the classroom is to really increase that child's sense of connection with you. Okay, so we want to try and the teacher would want to try to develop a relationship where the teacher really has that child's heart. That the child starts to love the teacher, because the more the child loves the teacher and more they're connected at the heart, the more that they'll respect them and respond to them and listen to them and want to please them and work with them. Whenever the child starts acting out, it means that we've kind of lost their heart. Okay, so we want to try and regain that. So, that's kind of a longer term approach to that, working with that child to really shift that behavior. But in the moment, if the child's misbehaving in the moment, how can we take proactive action right then and there? We can use the intervention methods, if they get violent or whatever. But otherwise, what we can do is just we can shift the activity in the class, or try something else that might engage that child in a more meaningful way. But we want to do that in such a way that the child doesn't figure out that you're adjusting your class and your activities to them, because then they might learn to abuse that. Instead, what we want to do is make a shift to shift the classroom's entire attention to something else. Okay, and then when we shift to something else, we want to try and engage that troublesome child in a way that they start to feel interested, and loved and connected into what's happening. Okay, so that's my best recommendation. But again, it's not. I really recognize this is not an easy thing to actually do or implement, because there are a lot of factors at play in this situation. Okay, Sakina asks, is it too late to start this after the child reaches tween or teenage years? Definitely not, because we're talking about connection. And all children and adults love and need to feel connected with others. I have people who have used the methods in my book with adults, or even I have adults who use these methods, the same methods, with their parents who are grandparents, and they use it with great success. Because again, we're talking about connecting with people by understanding the root cause of why they behave in specific ways, and connecting with them in a loving and empathetic and compassionate way, right? By showing and demonstrating our love through the way we talk and the way we engage them, and how focused and full our attention is, that really shifts people more quickly than not. Now, there are, of course, some tweens and teens are really disconnected, and they've maybe their need for autonomy has been deprived to some degree, so they've really kind of disconnected themselves, or taken a lot of space from their parents in order to help build up their need for autonomy, and therefore they might not want to share or spend much time with you. But that doesn't mean that you still can't reach through that disconnect by using some of the methods like the play attention time, but you do that in a different way, obviously, with an older child. But you might, for example, using play attention time with a teen, you want to figure out something that they like to do. Find an activity that they like to do that you can go and do that with them, and then just be there with them and enjoy it, and just appreciate the experience, and really take in like I said, that appreciation, and really acknowledge and recognize what they're doing and what that activity is, or their interests as they, when you're spending time with them and they start to share just that interest. Maybe you might even just go for a bite to eat, or you might do some activity together or anything, but to really just take that time to show them, right? Because actions speak louder than words, and it's one of the big mistakes I see parents make all the time is they're trying to use words too much, using lectures or trying to explain things, talking about things, talking. But children, and we all know, actions speak louder than words, and it's love, it's attention, it's time, right? Attention and time and care and genuine interest. These are the things which are really valuable. These are the things which are really tangible, and these are the things which have a lot of weight for children and even adults to show them how much you care and to really bridge any sense of disconnect. So I hope that helps inspire you, Sakina, to use this with tweens or teenagers as well. Okay. Rosalina asks, how to help a child who went through lots of emotional trauma heal as a preteen? That's a great question, Rosalina. So I think on February 7th, I have a webinar on helping children heal from stress and trauma, where I go a lot deeper into healing stress and trauma. But so you can join that to get a bit more information. But what we want to do again there is really use the 8 ways to help children heal from trauma and spend a lot of time with them as well, right? Because the more time that you spend with them, the more play attention time that I was just talking about, you create what you want. That will create a safe environment for them to really heal and to release their feelings, whether they need to do it through crying or whether they need to do it through talking or anything, right? They'll show you the best way they need to do that when you create a space for them where they feel safe, for them to actually heal that and overcome that. So an important part is to create that space, to create that environment. And you can do that in the greater scheme of your home life and your routines and your weekly schedule to create a safe environment for them on that level. And you can also do it within a specific condensed period of time, like scheduled 2-hour play attention time date with a child or something like that, where you go somewhere to do something and maybe a hike or a walk or whatever they like to do, and then I'll help them kind of heal through that. And then you can also kind of seek, there's also therapies and stuff like that. You might seek help with. Some practitioners use different types of approaches where they actually assist these 8 types of ways to heal, like play therapists, or one therapist that I met recently does this sandbox type of therapy, where they have this kind of like a sandbox thing that stands up, and then in the therapy session, the children get to kind of play with the sand and build and create things. And this is a type of symbolic play, right? So we can understand how this works as the child starts to kind of move through their feelings by actively playing with something. So I hope that helps, Rosalina. Okay, next question is from Lynn. She asks, what do you suggest when my 5-year-old son doesn't want to go to bed, for example, and throws a fit, including hitting me? I've tried holding him, but he uses that to hurt me more sometimes. Using a soft voice doesn't seem to calm him down. Also, please give specific examples of connective communication. Okay, so first off, we talk about bedtime, okay? So they throw a big fit at bed, and they get really aggressive and violent, and they have a big tantrum. So first off, Lynn, the fact that they're having a big fit like that also has its positive aspects. The positive aspects is that those feelings are just bubbling on a surface, and they're wanting to drain, and your child is seeking an opportunity to drain them, and they're coming out. So what we need to do then is to kind of create what I call a healing limit, which I talked about on this webinar, where there's 4 steps to doing the healing limit, and this is also explained in my book under setting limits, and there's a section under healing limits. And the first thing, of course, is you want to make sure they're safe. Okay, so if you can't hold them in a way that keeps them and you safe, then what you might want to do is kind of stand back from them a little bit so that they can't hurt you. Okay, but again, you create a physical limit so you don't let them maybe you bring them up to the bedroom or whatever, or you get them in the bedroom and they try and run out the door or something like that, and you just stand in the door and you don't let them go, right? And you let them know it's bedtime, that that's where they're going. You create a physical limit, and that's meant to bring them deeper into their feelings and their frustration, okay? Because now it's not a mean thing to it's not about trapping them in the room or like disempowering them or anything like that, because you're not hurting them, right? And you're meeting their needs for autonomy in many other ways. What you're doing with this physical limit is you're creating a barrier that they can therefore push against until those feelings come right up to the surface and bubble over and just completely drain and release, okay? So you might want to, again, create a little bit more distance so you don't get hurt. Soft voice doesn't seem to calm them down. Okay, I'm glad you brought this point up, because it's not about calming our children down. We do not want to rush our children to composure, okay, because that is another form of repressing or suppressing those feelings. We want to help them drain those feelings to completion, okay? So what I would suggest, Lynn, is to schedule going to bed earlier than you need to, because you know your child's going to put up a fuss, they're going to throw a big fit. So take the time to be there for your child, to have that big tantrum, to have that big fit. So stand there, set that limit, and say, I'm sorry, sweetie, it's bedtime right now. I'm not gonna let you out of your room, or it's time to go to bed. So and that kind of brings us into your last request about some examples around connective communication. So by using connective communication verbal limits, they kind of cross over into each other a lot of the time. So in this situation, you use because you're setting a firm limit, is you need to get them into bed, and that limit will help them come up against their feelings and their tension to help that tantrum really express itself fully, and then it'll drain, and then they'll go to bed. And also they'll start to go to bed with less and less resistance, because those underlying feelings, those emotions, that pressure, the tension, whatever there was kind of bursting out in their outbursts is being drained by setting these limits. So you can say things like repeating that it's bedtime, sweetie, and then you could, if they try to hurt you, you can you stop them and you would say something like, I'm sorry, my darling, I'm not going to let you hurt me, and things like that. Those are ways to use verbal limits, and also it's using the connective communication, because you can see that I'm not like speaking in a mean way. I'm just speaking very kind of neutrally as a matter of fact, and I'm using terms of endearment, and I'm also explaining to them, I'm explaining to them verbally what I'm doing physically. I'm not letting them hurting me, and I'm calling it like it is, right? I'm telling them, I see you're trying to hurt me, but I'm not going to let you hurt me. And by using the word hurt, it can also help them get into their feelings quicker, because they're hurting to some degree too. That's why they're expressing that. And their hurt can be an unprocessed hurt from some stress or something that happened in the past. So, but that's still there for them. Another great thing that I'd like to recommend to you, Lynn, is just to kind of start to maybe set up to try maybe different routines, or to make some adjustments to your routine before bed to help the transition go a bit smoother. So it's hard for me to give you a full recommendation without knowing their full routine before bed. But by creating specific kind of rituals or predictable routines in your daily kind of lead up to bedtime, can help children with those transitions, and it can be a lot easier for them. So maybe if your child might have a lot of stimulation before bed, to try and see how you can make some adjustments in your lifestyle to reduce that stimulation, so that it's more of a calming environment before bed. Or if they experience any pressure or overstimulation before bed, with TV or movies, or maybe a lot of busyness in the house, or schedules, or maybe they have extracurricular activities beforehand, that can also come up. Because it sounds to me, one of the needs that is really coming out for your child, Lynn, is the need for processing, right? They need to process these strong feelings, and then it's only at bedtime when when this is happening, which they're trying to have this need for processing met, which is why they're trying to process the upsets there. So hopefully those give you some help you there with that situation, Lynn. Okay, next question we have from Daniela. My son is grieving and reacts to my limit setting with violence, i.e. wanting sweets and biscuits. How can I help him? Okay, so your son is grieving. Okay, so that's something, that's to hear you say that, I can tell that you really care about your child, because you recognize that they have the need to process those feelings of grief, and that you're really sensitive to your child's needs. So that's really wonderful, Daniela. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how much of a wonderful mother you are, for realizing that and for knowing that. And yeah, and I understand that your child will react to limit setting with violence, and that's very, very common for a child to react aggressively or violently, or to have tantrums and outbursts when we set a limit. And again, that's a good thing, because it's showing they have these strong feelings, and they need to express and process it. So they're using the limit you set as an opportunity to process those feelings, which is good. That's what we want. The quicker they can drain those strong feelings, the quicker that they can get rid of them and come back to a place of clear thinking, good judgment, and zest and presence. Okay, so so definitely keep those limits. You're probably doing a great job with setting those limits, and just do what I would say is just keep focusing on trying to listen to those feelings to completion as much as possible, and eventually your child will get rid of those, and then they'll be able to move on. Now, wanting sweets and biscuits, yeah, that's what we call like a control pattern. And a lot of children will have lots of different types of control patterns. And the control patterns can start quite young, from pacifiers and soothers to babies who cry or get upset, to comfort feeding or comfort foods. And we can see sweets and biscuits would kind of fall into that category of comfort foods, helping to soothe emotions with food. And we can see with favorite toys or blankies or other things like that, of different control patterns. And I also talk about how to limit control patterns in the chapter on setting limits in my book as well. So you might want to take a look at that. But again, I would set limits with that as well, and to limit those sweets and biscuits, and to realize that when your child is being aggressive or upset, that what they need is not sweets and biscuits, right? That's not a genuine, legitimate underlying need. If they need some health and nutrition, then you can give them health and nutrition, but sweets and biscuits isn't health and nutrition, and that's just a distraction from their feelings. So again, focus on the underlying needs, which sounds to me they need to grieve a little bit more. Perhaps because of the grieving, they need a little bit more attention, a little bit more connection, just to help them through that. Because if everything's going good in life and there's not much situational stress, there's not much aggression stress, they don't have birth stress, and the passive stress, i.e. the unmet needs, is really minimal. You're meeting most of their needs, so there's not really a lot of passive stress. Then the child will behave, will behave great, and there won't be a need for limits or for this type of thing. But life goes up and down, and challenges do come, and so when something, a transition, a challenge comes, maybe a new baby's born, maybe someone dies, they grieve something, or there's a trauma or stress, or any type of situational stress might happen. Like, stress is an innate part of life. So when stress does arise, then a great way to kind of help our child transition through that is just schedule a little bit more play attention time. Just a little bit more attention can sometimes meet a lot of a child's needs for security, for connection, for comfort, for affection, to help them, just to reassure them that, what, everything's okay here. This small stress doesn't need to grow into a bigger stress, okay? So just remember that when a child does go through a challenge. Sometimes just a little bit more attention can just be enough to put them right back on track, and then the issue won't escalate to a point where you need to be to do some major intervention there. So so that's what I would recommend, Daniela. I hope that was helpful for you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so Arlene also asked a question: are you concerned about the movies and games that allow children to actively demonstrate extreme violence? Definitely. I'm not a supporter of violent movies or video games in the least. I don't think there's any need for them. I think it desensitizes our children and also people. So I would recommend to stay away from all forms of violence, because really that's that's a type of modeling, right? That children receive. Those games and the characters and the violence, those are really role models to some degree, right? They teach children to do that. And also, it teaches children to kind of not, it kind of dulls. I've found that people who play a lot of violent video games tend to it dulls their fighting spirit in other aspects of their life, because they tend to kind of just use the fighting spirit on a kind of virtual dimension. They might not always be able to achieve and to plan and to have as much ambition in real life, because it kind of just gets distracted perhaps in the virtual world of video games. That's just a little bit of a theory that I've kind of come up with just by observing people. Okay, let's see here. So Arlene asked, could you give your opinion about violence, what we're seeing in young people, like the Sandy incident, and what you can do to, okay, so just talk about, like the Sandy Hook incident in Newtown, right. Well, my opinion around that, yeah, you said it's not all about gun control. Definitely my opinion around that is that, it really has to do a lot, again, with anger and people's inability to use this strong emotion. They don't know how to express it or to communicate it with, right? It's like the fighting spirit that I talked about. It's a natural thing that we all have. And we can see the young man who did this terrible act. He used this, he expressed, the fighting spirit was probably felt so inhibited to achieve maybe more positive and healthy things in life, that it was drawn towards this really terrible ending. And so, and then again, of course, there's the whole issue around gun control and the violence in our culture and society, and the desensitization that comes from all the violence in the movies and in the media and in video games that can lead someone to doing this type of thing. So this type of thing, in my opinion, we really need to take a holistic approach to it, and realize that it's we have to try a new way to approach our anger and this fighting spirit that we all have, in kinder, more empathetic, more understanding ways. And the best way to do this is really focus a lot more on communication, right, and more connective communication, so that when we're talking and communicating with people, the love and the empathy and the compassion is coming through. Because if this young man who did this thing, if his needs were met, right, he wouldn't have needs to gone there. But there were so many needs that were probably gone unmet for such a long time that he was driven to this type of action. Okay, so the next question we have here is, so Linda says, my daughter self-soothes by popping wrists. This is a control pattern. Is this a control pattern? When I see these actions, should I ask if she is more feeling something or ignore it as a habit, or what else? Well, if you say that she self-soothes, then I would say that it is a control pattern, right? Because that's really, the control pattern is meant to control their feelings and their emotions, to soothe them. So, you can definitely try asking her how she's doing, or, find some way to kind of connect with her. Depending upon your child, she may or may not be responsive to asking her about her feelings. Maybe she might be more responsive to another way of kind of connecting to her feelings. But definitely, I would I think it's worth exploring that and using that as a cue to maybe connect with your child in another way and see where that goes. That's a great question, Linda. Sarah asks, what about a child watching the superheroes on TV and acting out while they're playing? Yeah, well, we can see right there that the child is using those as role models and is using a type of symbolic play to process that experience and to feel that. So so I'm not sure what your question is about that, but yeah, children will do that. And how can let's see, another question here. How can I help a child say when they're angry? Okay, so that's a question from Daniela. How can we help children say, I'm angry, I'm upset right now? That would come, there's a couple ways you can do that, is that when they are angry or upset, you might kind of just talk about it and bring that up and just ask them, are you upset? Are you angry? How are you feeling? Again, being sensitive to whether you're getting too intellectual and bringing them out of their feelings or out of their body, which is not something that you want to do. Then you can also, let's see, another thing you can do is just kind of express that yourself, to be a role model, right? Like if you're upset or you're angry or frustrated, you can just say that, rather than reacting to your child. If you're feeling a little bit irritated or frustrated, or if something happened and you're upset, you can just tell your child, mommy's a bit angry right now, something happened, I'm just kind of processing it. Or if you kind of speak harshly with your child, you can tell the child, I'm sorry I spoke a bit harsh, I was feeling a bit upset, I was a bit angry about something. And again, we want to try and use, especially if you speak harshly at them because they did something, try and remember to use a neutral phrase rather than the blame phrase so that they don't start to embody or feel the blame for that. Okay. Oh, Linda also wrote that her daughter is overly detailed with writing letter. Okay, yeah. So, well, I've seen that quite often where children will get kind of associate a lot of their, they want to become more exhibiting more perfectionist type of behaviors. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. But I have seen children where they start to get really upset, and if they don't do things perfectly, and that can indicate that maybe there's a need for recognition and acknowledgement that's going a little bit unmet because they're associating a lot of their esteem around how well they do something. So that's something to take a look at. Okay, another question says, another question from Lynn. How can I encourage my 5-year-old to speak up when a classmate hurts him in the rare event that the teacher doesn't see it happening? Sometimes he does speak up, but when it continues, he doesn't tell the teacher for fear of maybe getting his friend in trouble. Also, how should I handle my son's playtime? He's a preschooler, when he often talks of killing and dying. Is it just a boy thing? Too young to instill value of life? Okay, these are great questions, Lynn. Boy, really challenging me with some of these. Let's see. So, so for the school issue, you could I would just repeat it again, again and again, and maybe, but if he fears that his friend's going to get in trouble, then his friend probably does get in trouble, and and then who knows if his friend doesn't then push him or come back to him at the playtime or another time because they got in trouble, right? Which is a kind of a common thing that happens with bullies as well. As if they tell on the bully, then they'll also get the bully will come back to them when no one's looking and make them pay for telling on them, and then that just increases the feeling and it just increases the power of the bully that way. So we want to try and avoid that, and the best thing to do is I guess is to just keep talking with your child and let them know that it's okay to tell their teacher and just reinforce the fact that it's safe to express themselves, and maybe even have a talk to the teacher, and just as well to kind of just explain to them what's going on, so the teacher might be a little bit more sensitive, or maybe they I don't know if this is happening where they're at their seats or something, or where it's happening. But yeah, just talking to both of them might be a good approach. And but it's a tough situation, Lynn. Let's see. Okay, your other question is how to handle her son's playtime when he talks about killing and dying and that type of thing. There is a boy thing there for sure. We can look at the role models as well, where he's kind of seeing or hearing those types of things. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. To take proactive measures if you really don't like it is just to, in your play attention time or in your self-directed play, is to kind of set him up with other types of things to play with that don't, maybe take, rather than having toys that might have guns or different types of things where, little figures that can kill each other, give them different toys to play with. That's one option to kind of help inspire or encourage the play in a different direction by setting up the play environment or the toys using different toys that might not kind of inspire that type of aggression. Okay. Okay, and Linda says, her daughter gets mad when I ask how she feels or thinking. Does she feel unsafe with me? Well, she might be feeling angry. She might be thinking things that are upsetting her, right? So maybe you're actually getting through to her. But for the most part, it might not mean that she doesn't feel safe with you or unsafe with you. But maybe you haven't kind of created safe enough environment or space for her to really go into that. So maybe you could kind of warm up to those types of questions with other activity or spending time, some intimate time doing other things, and then kind of warm up towards that, right? So it's like maybe you're kind of asking those questions too soon or out of context or before she's feeling a really good. Okay, we have another question here. Kazia asks, when a child is throwing things or lashing out, these things won't prevent it. How do you deal with the unexpected? A 9-year-old, a generally great kid who never learned to deal with his frustration, but only with me. Okay, let's see here. Well, what you want to do is, like I said, is to use those intervention methods, right? Create a physical limit so that you stop them from hurting other people. And yeah, you can't, sometimes you're not always there. Sometimes you come after the fact or you intervene, and the damage is already done. If children are playing together and you're not around or you're not available to intervene, sometimes it's too late and the damage is done. And that's when you want to use the other methods of connective communication, looking at the underlying root cause and figuring out what are the underlying issues there, right? Why is the child acting, that way? Do they have any unmet needs? Stress, in this case, if the child hasn't learned how to deal with their frustration, perhaps what they're needing is more information about how to express or deal with their frustration, right? Or is it role models? Are they seeing this behavior? Or are they experiencing this from other people that might be bullying them or hurting them or being aggressive towards them? Okay, so by doing these types of things, then you will help to prevent these things from happening again. If you miss the opportunity to stop it in the moment and the damage is already done, then you can take preventative actions for it to happen later, and you can also help the healing happen for both people concerned. Okay. Okay, I hope that was helpful, Kazia. So again, let's see. Rosalina asked a question. My daughter's 10, and when she gets frustrated, she sometimes hits herself, more like playing drum on her body. How do I help her and prevent the self-hurting tendency? Okay, great question. Okay, so if she's frustrated and doing that, then we can probably say that she has a need for processing those feelings. And she also, one of the underlying root causes of that behavior is stress, right, or tension or pressure built of that. So we want to focus on those methods of healing. We talked about talking, crying, laughing, symbolic play. All those types of things can help your child heal those issues and find better ways to deal with her frustration. And again, doing the play attention time will provide great opportunities to assist her in that. Now, what I would also recommend is that if she hurts herself, like if she hits herself and she's not actually hurting herself, it might not be a big issue, but if she's actually hurting herself, and children sometimes do this, will bang their head on the wall or hit themselves, that type of thing, then we can, again, physically intervene by putting our hand between the body the part of their body they're trying to hit and their hand, and stopping them physically from hurting themselves, right? Or if a child's banging their head on the wall or the floor, this can happen with young kids sometimes, we can put our hand there to physically stop them from hurting themselves. Okay, and that creates a safe physical barrier. And again, we keep our hand as soft as possible so that when they do hit our hand with their hand or their head, they come into contact with a soft, loving hand, and then it helps to move the energy more to a soft place and away from the aggression. Okay, so that's what I'd recommend to you, Rosalina, is to physically create a limit to stop her from hurting herself, and then to use those democratic approaches to healing the stress, and that will help to teach her different ways to handle her frustrations. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you, Rosalina. Okay, so thank you everybody for these wonderful questions, and again for your time and attention. And I want to just leave by saying that I hope that every one of you every day gives your child all your love, and I want you to also give yourself that same love too, so you can fill your own cup. And together we can truly build a brighter future.